My name is Guy. I'm going to do the presentation about big data for the little people. The purpose is first to talk about the ROI and whether it's even worth it to invest in big data and analytics when you develop apps for kids, and also of course about the regulation around it and those kind of implications. So just a little bit about myself. I have two daughters today. One is 6, one is 9. So I'm really on the target audience. I know most about it, and I have another one minus 2 months is coming soon, so I will keep staying focused on the target audience, and this topic is very important for me even personally. Besides that, I'm the CMO of Tubtel. Tubtel, if you don't know Tubtel is one of the biggest publishers for kids games today in the App Store and on Google Play. We reached 1 billion downloads just a few months ago, so my head of communications asked me to wear this shirt all the time now, and Tubtel started 2011. Up to date, we created over 300 games for kids. We love each one of them. We keep analyzing those apps and keep trying to improve them from one app to another, and this is why this topic, we find it very, very important topic. So I think the first question that comes when discussing this topic is whether to develop your own system. It's something that I hear developers ask. They're actually asking two things: whether they even need to do data analysis and look at analytics at kids' games, and whether they should develop their own system. And I think the answer for this is complex and really changes from developer to developer, depends on the size of the company, depends on your purpose, why you even want to do this analytics. But generally, I would say that for most developers, indie, small, medium developers, I would say probably don't develop your own system for this, at least in the beginning. It's complex, it has issues, it's expensive. So consider first, before you try to develop your own tools for analytics, if you're in the kids space, consider first going for the existing tools out there. There are a few free tools out there. I think the first tools are the one provided by the stores. Apple have been so kind to finally release a reporting and analytics tool lately that is reasonably usable. Google have provided tools for quite some time, so the stores already provide some of the tools that you need. And Google even provides some interesting additional tools, not just the analytics tool, but tools that enable you to do A/B testing on some of the stuff. You can do A/B testing. You can, for example, on the marketing materials, this is one example that we did A/B testing on an icon, and this is a very significant tool to choose the right icon, the right materials, and it's very data-oriented A/B testing. You get exactly how significant the results are. So just two things. Number A is the one that won between the icons and generated the most installs in this case of the test. Okay, it's I think, you know, for you as adults, those A, B, C look more or less the same. They seem like they are more or less the same, but for the kids they are completely different icons. And as you can see, the result was that icon A won, and it won so very significantly. It won between 20 to 40% more installs than the others, and it's so very significant. This is the kind of data that's worth really gold for developers, and just by testing the icon and using existing tools to test. So this is one great tool, and even testing lesser important materials such as the show description in the store, which is just this show text that you put at the top, and you do A/B testing which text works better. And you can see that you can get easily a few percent of improvement. In this case, the change of text caused up to 4% improvement in the number of installs. So again, this is a free tool provided by Google Play. No need to develop your own sophisticated tools. First, you can try to use these tools. Another very widely known tool is Flurry. Flurry is a free analytics tool. It actually belongs to Yahoo today. It's very widely used by developers, and it has if you tag your apps that are targeted to children, it has a COPO compliant version, and actually the COPO compliant version has most of the features enabled, and only some of the features are not working, but most of the features are enabled in the COPO compliant version. So it's a free tool that you should definitely consider and try before going and developing your own tools. By the way, at the same space as the Flurry, Google recently released Firebase. Firebase is kind of what they did with Google Analytics. They released Firebase as Firebase is a whole set of tools, but I think the most important one is the part of the analytics in the Firebase. And Firebase is also free. That's what they promised, that it is free and will stay free, and it looks very promising. And it will be interesting to see if it replaces Flurry as the go-to analytics tool for those who are looking for free analytics in their apps. And it is COPA compliant. We already checked it with Google, and we got a confirmation for this. Another important tool that we all have is the Excel. Some of the things you can just use your Excel, do some testing, and your Excel is obviously fully COPA compliant, no problem doing whatever analysis that you want. One example is doing price testing. You can do price testing, change the prices. You can do it in different geos, change the prices differently in different geos, and use your Excel to see how significant the change is. And sometimes, as you see in our example, the change can be very significant, and again, there is no problem doing it in the kid space, just like any other space in the games out there. Now let's say that for some reason you did choose to develop your own tool. There are reasons to do it. We just did it not so long ago, decided to develop our own tool. One reason might be that you don't want to share all your data with third parties. That could be one reason. Another reason could be that you want to get some specific info that you don't get from these external tools. So obviously COPA is the first consideration. COPA is the child, probably everyone here knows it, but it's the Child Online Privacy Protection Act by the FTC that is meant to protect the privacy of the kids from businesses who are trying to collect and track information about the kids. By the way, COPA is not the worst one for us to deal with. It's not the toughest one, let's call it. The European laws are actually getting even more stricter now than COPA in the US, but COPA is the more familiar one, so we will focus on COPA. And so COPA in its essence means do not track and collect information when you target your games for kids. But there are two very important buts here. The first one, everything that is aggregated data, like the price testing, for example, that I showed you before, or anything like that, there is no issue there. You don't do anything personal, you don't track any personal information, it's just aggregated information, so it's completely COPA compliant, everything in this. And the second one that is much more interesting, and many developers don't know it, that there is an exception in the COPA that's called support for internal operations. And this includes analytics to improve the user experience in your app, and you are allowed to do it if the only thing that you collect is the PII. PII is the personal identifier information. It's like the IDFA or the ID of the user. And you are allowed to collect it under some restrictions to do this support for internal operations. So I'm not your legal advisor, and obviously everyone has to consult with his legal advisor, but you should know that this exception exists, and it's completely legal to track internally the usage of the apps for these purposes. So first, if you develop your own BI system, I would always recommend to start with the aggregated information. First, there is all the information from the stores, from the ad networks, from all the external sources that is not private information, it's not personal, and you should just collect all this to your database. There is no COPA issue with that, and you can already get those interesting insights that I showed you before. You can get even some indication about the usage of your app from information about sessions and impressions if you're working with ad networks. Obviously, you can get the data from Apple and Google, so this aggregated information should be your first step before getting to the more complex part of actually collecting any personal or user information. Again, there are external tools out there, such as AppAny, AppFigures, that do some of this work for you, but then again, you lose the control over the data, so it's up to you if you want to do it yourself or you want to use external tools for that. Now, if you did choose to start collecting user data for the purpose of doing the support for internal operation and analyzing the user behavior, here are some recommendations. Again, you should consult someone who is a specialist in a legal advisor, but the first one is collect only the ID. If you start collecting anything else about the users, even just the name of the user or anything else, it doesn't fall anymore under the support for internal operations. So the only thing for this purpose that you are allowed to track is this ID of the user. The second one is what you are going to use it for. The fact that you are allowed to collect the ID doesn't mean you can use it for whatever you want, and it surely doesn't mean you can share it. You can only use it for the internal operations. You cannot use it for behavioral targeting, and you cannot obviously give this information to anyone else. The third bullet, which looks obvious, is mining the security, but security is very important. I don't know if you've heard, but there have been some charges by FTC for companies over COPA that didn't keep the security of this data. So even if they collected only what they were allowed to collect, but they didn't keep the security of this data properly. A specific requirement by the COPA is being able to delete any user record. It means that if someone calls you and wants you to delete his record, you should be able to do it, and this is a complex requirement. And obviously you can tell him, hey, go reset your IDFA on your device, but that's not good enough. If he insists that you have to delete the data and not ask him to reset the IDFA or the Google advertising ID on his device, then you have to be able to do it. So this is a complex requirement. And you should retain the data only for as long as it's really needed. It's a tricky definition, but only for a reasonable time. And obviously you should be clear about everything that you are doing in your privacy policy. So these are the high-level guidelines that you should keep in mind, and some of them are not simple to implement. One technical tip that we encountered and we share with you is you got this call to delete his daughter's record, and this can be very tricky. If you are tracking loads of information like us, we have billions of events being tracked every day, and now you have to delete a user from log files that are being archived wherever. It could be very, very difficult to implement. So one simple trick for this is just don't keep his user ID in these logs. Keep some other ID and keep a mapping between them. You just generate some random or encrypted ID, save the other ID, and then when you get this call, all you need to do is delete the mapping, and poof, this user disappeared. So this is one kind of trick that you need to think of when you implement such a system, to not get into complicated solutions later on, especially if you really have big data with you. This is the last part of what I wanted to talk about, and this is to give you some real-life examples from Tubtel of how the analysis really could give you valuable insights and give you real valuable information that you could use to make better apps and improve your apps without having any privacy issues. So one of the first things we look at when we develop the app, because at the end of the day we need to make money from the app, and to make money we need at least some percentage of the users to make in a purchase inside the app. Obviously we don't have whales, we don't even have dolphins, and barely have fish there in this pool, but you do need some of the fish to make an in-app purchase. And one of the first things to learn is what is the purchase time of the users, and for this you need an analytic system, and we are tracking this over these 300 apps for a long time. And what we found out very clearly is that the purchases happen in the beginning of the usage. They happen in the first day, they happen in the first 1 to 3 sessions, and this is when the user purchases. And if someone did not purchase in those first 3 sessions and in the first day, he's not going to purchase the in-app purchase later on. So it's something to keep in mind when you design your apps for kids. You have to show him the good stuff early. If you don't show him the good stuff early and make him feel like, okay, I love this app, I want the full version very early, even if it will come back, but he will not make an in-app purchase later on. Another thing, another type of monetization that we use the analytics to learn and see if it's worth it or not is the rewarded videos. There is a lot of talk about rewarded videos here in the Casual Connect, I heard. And we were very afraid at the beginning to use rewarded videos in kids' apps. We were afraid of the usage, we were afraid of how users will accept it, but not just this, we were also worried whether it will impact very badly the in-app purchase inside those apps. And in the beginning it did. We used it in the wrong way and it did hurt the in-app purchase, but after some time and after some experiments and trial and error, when we did learn how to implement the rewarded videos correctly, we found a way to use it without hurting the in-app purchase at all, and we actually saw a very nice increase in revenues by the rewarded videos. So it's also a kind of thing that you need an analytic system, you need to be able to try different things and learn the impact on the usage. And I can tell you that today we see that kids actually love rewarded videos. For them, if we could make all the money only from rewarded videos, we actually heard of some kids that actually love watching the rewarded videos. It's part of the fun for them when playing these apps. Most of our apps, or at least some of them, are built from different scenes. It's kind of like, think of a Playmobil house or a Lego house, that you have the bathroom, you have the saloon, and you have different scenes inside the apps, and many of our apps are built with different scenes. So obviously it was very important for us to learn which scenes are the ones that our users actually love and which scenes are not really being used, and either remove those unused scenes or try to improve them. So as you can see, our users don't like to take a shower in the app too much, but they do love the party and the dress up. The dress up is actually the main scene, I think, that's pretty obvious from the young girly audience that most of these apps are targeted at. So this was very important information for us to learn which ones to improve. And because we have the dress up scene in so many apps, in so many variations, we wanted to learn how to make it optimize the dress up scene. So what we did, we added analytics events, so we'll be able to learn which categories in the dress up are mostly used, and not just which one are mostly used, but also what is the magic number. Because you can put thousands of dress-up items and categories in an app, or you can put only a few of them, but how many will the user actually use? And because making more and more dress-up items costs money, it makes the app heavier, and it can even confuse the user. So we were looking for this magic number, and what we found out is those are the magic numbers for us. Of course, it might be different in different apps, different teams, different UX. But for us, the magic number was 5 categories of items with 8 items in each category. This was more than that was actually gaining us no extra usage and no extra in-app purchase. Users were they didn't feel like scrolling too much in the categories of the dress up and in the categories of the items. So this was just enough for each scene. For a single scene, this was enough, and it makes the app lighter. And it was very important for us to find these magic numbers to make the app really optimized for the user in terms of the dress-up scenes. Another example, I don't know if you know the term grinding in this context, but what we do, sometimes we do some kind of gating and locking on our premium scenes, so the user cannot just get into the scene every time she wants. She has some gate. So we tried 2 types of gates. One gate was time-based gate. We tell her, hey, you have used this scene enough. If you want to use it again, you have to come back in 1 hour, for example. The other type of gate that we tried was grinding. By grinding, I mean she has to go play other scenes, she earns points, and when she has enough points, she can get back to the premium scene. And then we tested these 2 kind of gates in our audience, and what we found out was that the grinding worked much better. It generated much higher usage with our users, both in terms of session length and retention, and we started using it much more, the grinding. My last example, this is the paint. We have a paint scene. We use it in many apps. Those kids, they like to paint, so in many cases we had a paint scene that the characters from the app, they can paint those characters, they can save it, etc. And then again, we had the UX dilemma, whether we should open the paint scene as an overlay pop-up on top of the main scene with the character, and then the kid can paint the character, close the overlay pop-up and continue playing, or whether we should take the child to another scene, which is completely full screen, separate scene for painting. And it looks like a small dilemma, but it is a UX issue that we weren't sure which one is going to work better with our audience. And what we found out was that making the paint as a separate scene works better by far, 2 times better in terms of usage. Somehow using it as a pop-up overlay probably just confused them or something like this, having the other scene in the background. You don't always know the why. You don't know why something works better than the other, but if the numbers are big enough, at least you know the answer that X works better than Y, even if you don't know the reason for that. So we learned that a separate scene for paint worked much better in our apps than opening it as a pop-up overlay. So to wrap it up, my purpose was just to give you a few examples to show you the value of the insights that you could get even in kids apps. There is no whales. You don't try to increase the RPPU and track the whales personally and do sophisticated stuff to make more money, but just to improve the user experience and usage time in your apps. It does have a lot of value to use analytics in kids applications. It does not necessarily mean you should develop your own system, because keeping the privacy and COPO compliance is complex, so it depends on your attention and how big you are, but it does bring ROI. That's it actually. Any questions?
Does anybody have a question for Guy?
Okay.
I have a quick question for you, because it's super interesting. As a developer for kids myself, we have to get out of our own heads and get into the data and understand. I think your first example was great about the different App Store icons and what you thought would work versus what works for the actual kids. Is there something funny or some anecdote you could share of what you've learned that really surprised you about the kids that you create apps for? Any fun story there? Not to put you on the spot.
Should have prepared me.
Oh, I'm sorry, not to put you on the spot. Or maybe something that a direction you took a game that you didn't expect to from learnings.
Yeah, there are a lot. They always surprise us. It's not like we never really expect the analytics up front to show what it shows. We don't know. For example, just even what I showed you earlier with the shower, we thought that when you are taking care of a doll at home, and shower is one of the activities, and we were sure it's going to be one of the top used activities, and we really found out they just don't like it, and there is no clear, simple explanation why. So many times you have these surprises of what works, what doesn't work. It's kind of surprising. Also in terms of marketing, like the icons, that we can always be surprised which icon works better. This icon that I actually showed you, the broccoli, really surprised us, because we thought it's kind of, we're trying to sell something healthy to the kids, broccoli, but eventually this icon won by far, and we were sure that the one, if you remember, there was one like a gummy balloon that the kid is doing and blowing a gum, which should have been funnier, and we were sure so it's always surprising to find out the reality.
Which is why the data is important,
data
right?
Is totally important. To explain again, what is grinding? Okay, so it's a term from game designers. The term grinding, it means sometimes there is a premium scene. For example, we have this one is a wedding application. So going to the actual wedding, we call it a premium scene. They cannot do the actual wedding scene every time they want. We want them to really work hard for this. So we give them 2 options. Either, okay, you use it 2 times, now you have to come back in 1 hour to use it again. Assuming you don't buy. If you buy the full version, you just get all of it. But I'm talking about the free users. So either you wait an hour, or we give you another option that you go play other scenes, you gain points, you gain stars, and then when you have enough stars, you can enter the premium scene again. I said in the beginning we have over 300 apps, so it changes very widely. But I would say in the worldwide we have around the 2%. 2%, but yeah. iOS. On Android, it's a bit lower.
Hi.
Yeah.
Good presentation. Thanks for this. Can you talk a little bit about scaling your analysis across your 300 games? I mean, these are really great examples, but if it takes one person to set up, an A/B test on one game, and you've got, let's say, 30 games that are live, what are some of the ways you have got around, putting one person on each game, which becomes 30 people, for example?
Yeah, for us first, yes, this is a very big challenge in many aspects, handling the large portfolio. You're right, the testing. So we usually release a new game every week. So when we are doing a test like this on the icon, this week, this is the app that we are going to release. So we are handling this one. We are all focused on this one. I mean, the app has been developed for a few months, but the release now happens, it's just one app, even if we have been developing it for a few months. So at a given point of time, we are focused on a single app. But then what we do, and this is different from the gaming industry, in most of these apps, not in all of them, but in most of these apps, we learn for the future. We know that we move to the next app. So when we learn that grinding works better, it doesn't mean that I will go fix now all the apps that I use time-based locked, and I will change them to use grinding instead. I will just use grinding in the next app we develop. So we are always focused on the next app and making it better instead of going and fixing backward. Unless we see something really terrible, then we might go and fix backwards. So this is the way we work with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. So you're in slide in the reward videos, and revenue contribution is 12 into 14%, and the total revenue means IAP revenue plus ad revenue. Is it correct?
So you're asking what's the percentage distribution between IAP and ads?
Yeah, so I guess in the 12 into 14% revenue contribution is in over the reward video revenue over and over all IAP and ad revenue.
Yeah, you're talking about the rewarded videos.
Right.
Yeah, it was an overall increase of 12 to 40%. Yeah, for us, rewarded videos today is very significant, the revenue.
Then what other monetizations modules are you using, and other than rewarded video? Are you using like other banner or FSI or other static?
Yeah, we have tried like everything almost. We've tried, that monetizing in this space is not easy at all. We are using banners, interstitials, rewarded videos. We are using all of them. Different apps, we are using different things, but overall we've tried all of these. We believe that we should monetize the apps. If we want to be able to develop more apps, we need to monetize them. Some of them do really well in in-app purchase, but there is some of them just don't make any in-app purchase at all, so you have to monetize differently. We work with the ad networks very closely. We have personal relations with the people responsible in the ad networks, so they do reply to us because we are big enough probably, but first you put the filtering, and then sometimes things pass by the ad network's filters, and then you have to go to the networks, tell the specific network you have to fix it, or we turn off this network in this app. So we work with a few networks, and we did have problematic networks in the past, and we just, I would say focus on the big ones. If you're working on kids apps, don't go for all these little startups. I love startups. I always worked in startups, but because of the sensitivity here, don't go for all these little startups. They don't even know what kind of ads they are getting you. You should work with AdMob or other really big public ones.
Thank you, Guy. Everybody give Guy a round of applause. Thank you.